Hey, Suzanne, how are you? Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. So, how's the day today, dear?
It's early here, but it's great to begin the day again with you, and I'm looking forward to everything that's coming forward.
And I really wish that you begin your every day with me, like this, with this interview. I know that's not possible, but of course, like we can wish for that to get your precious time again and again. And I must appreciate that the time that you share with us and your thought, your opinion that you share with us. These things are really worth listening to. This positive effort that you are trying to put by contributing into the society by sharing your knowledge. We really appreciate your effort.
Thank you. I think we need to be doing more of this. I think, I applaud you in reaching
Hmm.
out to
Hmm.
me and so many others, because I think we've got a lot to learn from each other.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, as you know, that today we are going to talk about the role of the teacher in a society. The teaching profession somehow is losing the value, might be in developing and also in the developed countries. And teachers, they were considered as the nation builders. That title was only connected to the teachers earlier. But as far as if we see the situation nowadays, we can consider that people are calling it the nation builder, but they don't consider it in the practical life. There are other professions which are getting more value from the people, from society, from the bodies, from the governments as well. But when it comes to the teaching profession, it's declining day by day. What do you think that what are the reasons and how can we get back to the same title what we deserve for the teachers?
Yeah, it's the same thing, unfortunately, that's true here. We're
Hmm.
having many of the long-established teachers who are leaving.
Hmm.
Fewer people are going into the profession.
Hmm.
It's a fraught field in part because people are at odds about what they want their children to learn,
Hmm.
who they want to teach it, what they want taught.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a far cry from where we were at just a few years ago,
Hmm.
where there was a sense of the importance of education in its own right.
Hmm.
Here it's become a political um, issue in so many different ways. And I think back to the mid 19th century in this country when there were real efforts being made on the ground to establish public schools, by which I mean those that are open to the community free of charge through,
Hmm.
local taxes and efforts. And the same thing with libraries, to open up libraries to everyone. So it wasn't simply the wealthy who were able
Hmm.
to have books and knowledge, with the idea that that was a key factor in building democracy,
Hmm.
in building an understanding of core values, of core history, of knowledge and facts that would be important in terms of building a better society and building one where shared interests would bring together multiple people of different generations, of different geographies, and have that work together. But we've lost that. And I think
Hmm.
if we look around the world, we look around this country and around the world and think about the hard divisions that we've enabled to take root.
Hmm.
I think at the core of that is really education and
Hmm.
uh, a shared knowledge and ways in which we're going to address issues.
Hmm.
Actual research, data-driven assumptions, and it's critical for the environment. It's critical for making a society for everyone in it that's viable. And it's
Hmm.
I think it goes, you're absolutely right, it goes back to the issue on respect for teachers and respect for education and finding ways to make it flourish.
Hmm. So, just as you said, respect the teacher, respect the education, these are the two sides. But if we see education, how people consider education is somehow people are leaning more towards that. But when it comes to the teaching profession, people are not very much interested to join this profession. Might be it's the least paid profession. I mean, the value is very less. So, what do you think that how can we make this profession once again the valuable? Is it only the finances? Or is it only, and what factors are included in declining the value of the teaching profession? Is it really the teacher himself who is not grooming himself? or it could be the obsolete education content that we are delivering in our schools, colleges, universities, or is it really the system which is not helping them to get to the same level? So what do you think, why teachers are facing these challenges and they're declining?
Oh, that's a really tough question, and it's obviously a multi-pronged one. I
Hmm.
think in part it's a question of our governments
Hmm.
emphasizing education and being willing to invest the time, the currency, and I'm speaking of currency not just in monetary terms, but
Hmm.
the valuation of it. And that's on the one hand, and then providing avenues for people to become teachers. You
Hmm.
don't just wake up one morning and jump into the classroom. I
Hmm.
mean, one has to have a core of knowledge that's important.
True.
So I think that that's there. I think that you'd also asked about what we can do as teachers to kind of reframe
Hmm.
where we're coming from. I would say that passion is critical,
Hmm.
and that ability to really the energy and the sense that we're doing this on our own, as opposed to, I mean, in my own life, I lie to myself a fair amount and
Hmm.
suggest to myself that I'm free to do anything I want. I can go into a classroom and expound on whatever things are of interest to me. That my university kind of allows me to think that, even though I know it's not true. But I
Hmm.
think that all of us want that space, that
Hmm.
freedom, where in our work environment and in our home environment, we think that we actually have a role to play, and an important
Hmm.
one. And when we get a kind of structure of a curriculum that, I'm imagining kind of 95 pages long, single spaced, of everything we have to cover,
Hmm.
without paying close attention to, well, what are the issues for the children? How can I best
Hmm.
teach those students to make them better, not just students, but better individuals, to really shape the
Hmm.
world. I think we
Hmm.
need, for lack of a better word, we need oxygen. We need
Hmm.
that space that's going to help us as teachers and
Hmm.
help students to really engage that. And so with that whole sort of long list of things that everybody has to know, we lose that focus on what is really unique about humans in
Hmm.
some ways, is that creativity and the fun. To me, it's actually enormous fun to teach.
Hmm.
And I try to make my classes such that each student contributes to it, in each class, and I draw on them. And one of the things that I and other good teachers are very good at doing is reading the room.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter what the room is. It can be a room of, political interests or
Hmm.
otherwise, but you get to understand, you get to see each of the students and understand where they're coming at in it.
Hmm.
But this is a tough one. But I think it's so important that we have to do it,
Hmm.
because education is our future.
Yeah, true, it is. So just as you have started talking about the one perspective, which is from the student side, do you really think that students are considering teachers as their role models, or are the other models are considered as the role models, the real time, the entertainment, or the industry, media industry? So they are considering them as the role model, but are they also considering teachers as their role model? And how a teacher can help every student to live his life a successful one, or lead his life toward the road of the success? How teacher can become the leader for a student by becoming the role model?
That's such an important question, or set of questions. And I think that the internet has changed many things. And I
Hmm.
can give you an example here. I recently learned, I mean, the situation used to be you'd have students in your classroom,
Hmm.
they would take your courses, you would see how effective they were at them, and then the professor would write the letters of recommendation, and from there
Hmm.
they would get positions in the world. What I've learned recently is that employers are Wall Street and others are going to LinkedIn. They're finding
Hmm.
our students' names, they're contacting them and saying, we'd love to have you come work for us during X summer, and
Hmm.
you need to take X and Y courses.
Hmm.
And when I saw that, it floored me, because basically they have completely moved around the role of the professor, the
Hmm.
role of the mentor, the role of a body of professors, and I'm
Hmm.
now on one of those councils at my university. It's elected by other faculty members to
Hmm.
address key issues, but they're going around, the employers are going around us
Hmm.
to engage with the students directly, which means that our criteria for what are the requirements to finish your course in the university
Hmm.
is being reshaped
Hmm.
from the outside. So I would say, I think that, I mean, I'm getting huge support from students in my classes. I mean,
Hmm. Great.
they really love them, and I really love working with them. And I think
Hmm.
that's true for many of us. But I
Hmm.
think that we are in a moment, and probably it has to do in part with the economic um, shifts, and
Hmm.
that parents particularly, but also students, are really nervous about what fields they're going to go into, and what their work will become. And
Hmm.
so, and I think that parents are a little bit too controlling. I don't think they've got enough faith in their children
Hmm.
to come and learn new things, and to shake things up and make the world
Hmm.
new. I mean, I was just telling a group of undergraduates
Hmm.
on Wednesday that the number one major for passing the exam to get into medical school
Hmm.
is philosophy. And they looked at me at like, how could that be? But and art history is like way up there as well, because we
Hmm.
train people how to look, and you can't be a good physician
Huh.
without a good set of eyes and knowing what you're looking for.
Hmm.
So I think it's just a combination of things that, getting parents to relax a bit, have more faith in their
Hmm.
children, getting more support at every level for
Hmm.
critical funding and support for education,
Hmm.
and then opening up the curriculum. So we're not just focused on, you becoming a lawyer or a doctor or a finance person or an
Hmm.
engineer, but getting back to the real roots of education, which is
Hmm.
knowledge, right?
Yeah,
Knowledge of
true.
everything, that, because as these professions change, as the work is shifting,
Hmm.
and now very rapidly, you're really going to be left with what you know and your agility to move through these through a vast array of experience that we can
Hmm.
learn through many different fields.
Yeah, true. Okay, so this is the student perspective. So, and tell me one more thing, that how teachers can lead the society, how society can really pay back to the teaching profession, and the teachers could really do something good for them.
So here I would put the onus on the teachers themselves. I
Hmm.
think that, and I will say frankly, I'm in a really excellent position, because I do
Hmm.
have the kind of time and support that many
Hmm.
teachers do not have. But
Hmm.
I think that as a teacher, you develop such incredible skills that
Hmm.
we can take it and put it to use in times when we're not actually in the classroom or actually teaching.
Hmm.
As I mentioned, I can read a room in
Hmm.
seconds. I can
Hmm.
see everybody in it. And as I'm
Hmm.
speaking, I can tell what the response is.
Hmm.
And with that in mind, I can turn to people and engage them. I know how to, if you ask me to speak for 2 minutes, I can
Hmm.
do it. I
Hmm.
just know I can speak for 30 minutes. I know how to show up on time. I can
Hmm.
put my jacket on so I look professional. These are
Hmm.
all actually really good skills. I can do an Excel sheet. I can get people together. I can write
Hmm.
emails.
Hmm.
And I think that that's what I have decided to do. So I balance my time with getting involved really with the community.
Hmm.
I founded a neighborhood group with a
Hmm.
group of others, in part to protect some architectural buildings. And
Hmm.
then that grew into the neighborhood association. And
Hmm.
then that grew into an association of all the neighborhoods in Cambridge, a
Hmm.
very important group that is in part political, on trying to balance out our needs for financial well-being, which Cambridge is, we're one of the top
Yeah.
cities with labs, to taking into account the needs for housing and residences in the environment. So I think that's on us to realize that we have huge strengths from our profession. I mean, we can go into it as we are, but you're standing in front of a classroom and it is a skill. Your brain and your body work intact, and you have to, at the beginning of each semester, I'm sort of prepared, as we all are, like, that first class comes and it's a survival, am I ready for that? Because the brain skills are just not there when you're not in the classroom. So I think it's on us to do much more. And we are a network, across the state, across the country, across the world, that really could become a force for good.
Good one. Well, you are working with a very renowned university, in fact, a leading university in the world, and they have selected you. It means and you have spent your whole life there. It means you are competent enough that we can consider you as the leader of the teachers who you are at that role. But tell me that in your experience, what are your findings and what are the key factors of the teacher that makes him the best teacher in the school or might be for the student? What are those key factors? Is it really teachers training, development, and everything that they do? Is it more about the content, or is it about the relationship they build with the student? So in your understanding, in your experience, what are your findings and what are the characters or the features of a teacher that makes them successful teacher?
It's all of that. I can really only speak for myself. I mean, there are some teachers who you hear them lecturing outside of classes. I'm sort of walking by and I'm in awe. I just, I want to put down what I'm doing and go sit in the back of the classroom. And I would say that those teachers, and to some degree myself as well, are passionate about what we do and are lifelong learners of whatever it is. And in the university world, it also means taking the time and the effort to publish, because I find that when I'm talking about things that I know really well because I'm actively involved in that research, that's helpful. I think the other thing is to really explore new kinds of ways of teaching. And I look broadly at that. And at this juncture, I found for me what is a really terrific method. So that I have, and here I'm talking at the university level, but it could also work for the high school level and maybe even younger. I have them do daily blogs or weekly blogs, and I give them the topic, but then early on I figure out what is going to be their project for the semester. I work it out with them so that there's not more than one student in the class who's working on the same project. But then I give them the same assignment each week. So I teach a class on World's Fairs. So each has a different World's Fair, and they know what they are, all of them. And then each week there's a different topic, like the economics of building a fair, or how are issues of diversity engaged in the fair. So each week is a different blog assignment. And then I call on them to present those blogs in class. And I'm nefarious in a way. Teachers are not supposed to do this, but I think it's very helpful. I let them see each other's blogs. They look at what each other is doing. So they are learning from each other. And then I let them change them up until the last day of class. So if their first blog is not so great, they're learning from others. And if in the course of that, by the end of it, I mean, yes, they have to do a final project. And yes, each class are discussions of the text that we're reading. And I lecture in each class as well on that broader theme. But they're learning as much from each other as they are from me. And they're getting a sense that they're really making a unique contribution to the class. And their other classmates are learning as much from them as they are from me. And I think getting that balance, and just as a practical matter, blogs are online. I'm not cutting down trees. I mean, I do the tree cutting with my books back here, but, and and I don't have to keep track of all of these pieces of paper, as people are doing them.
Hmm.
And so that's one of the techniques I use. I also, my first few years of teaching, I was teaching at Columbia, which uses the Socratic method, which means you elicit answers by way of questions. You don't answer per se. So all of my notes for class were a series of questions. And I come back to that. I can't claim I would ever be as great an interviewer as you are, but in class, I'm doing those kinds of close questions. And I ask for volunteers. And then if no one volunteers, I will say, okay, well, I'm thinking of somebody who's wearing a black shirt. And then they all look down, and then somebody feels he's only looking at me. And so they'll raise their hand. So trying to make that kind of fun, and finding ways so that people enjoy coming to class and are participants in it.
That's a very good approach. And it's something which is really, helping everybody to build the environment, the learning environment, the educational environment. But this thing has ring a bell in my mind that as far as we see in our countries, teachers are more engaged into non-teaching activities, and institutions are expecting from them that you should maintain the discipline, and these are the things that you have to do. Might be something you have to stand here and see when the students are having their breaks, so you have to take care of them. They should not fight with each other and all. And they're engaged in so many non-teaching activities. How do you see that, how an educational institution can play the part in helping teachers becoming the teacher where they should be and what they should be? What do you see?
Right.
How do you see that?
So it's interesting because that has come on campus just now here, because there's a kind of a souffle, right? There's a kind of just growth of the amount of out of classroom work that teachers have to do, all of the committees, all of the reports, and the university is finally beginning to feel the burdens. Now, part of the thing that's happening here is in the last 25 years, the number of administrators has grown exponentially, in part because universities need to get money from the federal and other entities. And so there's this constant quest. But the university came back to us and said, well, we're going to do a study of how much time you're having to put in, which was great. At the same time, I pointed out, well, it would be really important if we had a page limit on the reports that we have to file. So if somebody's coming up for tenure, which is a lifelong appointment, or is coming up for a hire, department can only turn in, say, a 6-page single-spaced, 11 font, 1-inch margin report, because the reports that we're turning in now, they used to be 6 pages or 3 pages, and now they're like 25 pages. So it's got to be, we've got to have an ability to kind of push back on the administration to say, this is a shared thing that we're in together. And I mean, it's certainly complicated because in some contexts, teachers have the ability to unionize. I don't. I'm considered an officer. We are here, all of us. It's nothing special. But finding the way the way I explain my university system, you get a hierarchy. You go through the faculty and the dean, student faculty deans, and then those at the top. The most powerful people here are the students at any universe, and so I work with them, and I try to be very careful about not engaging my particular ideas on them, but getting them to express them. So right now, yesterday, a group of students came to me about the issue with one of our buildings being named after a pharmaceutical that has been highly dangerous, and I supported them. And so that's one way that we can begin to do it, is to just listen and offer support. And one of the other ways is simply to work together on this, to make it really clear what is ultimately happening, and to encourage funding in other agencies to address this. I mean, it's pretty hard when you have limited resources. And I would say if there's one problem, there are many problems in the globe now. One, of course, is the environment, and we're facing that here now in climate change. The other is that we've removed vast amounts of money from public good into the hands of a very few. And it means we've got large sections of our communities who are without the necessary funding, and a government that is increasingly strapped for funding because those monies are not coming into the state government. I would also say that I'm a real supporter of traditional kings and traditional rulers, particularly in Africa, because they are beholden to the people. So that, and they can be removed from power more easily, and they're selected because of their qualities of rulership. So I think getting leaders involved in many different ways and having them realize how important this is for both the present and the future, because we can think about the future and forget the idea that life right now is very complicated and very difficult and very fraught, and that we can play a better role currently at the local level if we engage. And shocking to me at this juncture, I can call up the leading city councilors and talk to them about things that are coming before council, just because of my role here in the last few years. You build that kind of a relationship base through that work, and it makes that life easier. You don't always win. I mean, I think the greatest skill we have is failure, to learn to accept failure. And I often tell people that my skin is 6 inches thick, from pushback and whatever it is. But I think that, and that's a gendered thing. I think for the most part, women have a harder time when we get criticism. We think we have to be 110%, and we certainly don't. But I think that we have to, those who succeed are those who really fail and know how to fail and come back from it.
Great one. Well, before we move on to the last question of this interview, I would like to request you to have another interview in which I'm gonna ask you about the failure management, and what do you think that how people can really learn to handle the criticism, because this is something which everybody is really suffering from, and no, they usually do not have anybody to ask this question, or they can't share their failure, their stories with the people because they are going to judge them. So what could be the general perception? I would love to talk about that perspective from you, with you. And I hope that you will give us time for that as well. So
I would love to.
Yeah, thank you so very much for that. And I'm definitely we are definitely gonna have that quite soon. All right, so moving on to the last question of the interview. So just as you were mentioning about the government part, and you did mention that they are providing the free of cost schools, free of cost education to the people, so that more and more people get enrolled, and they should get themselves educated, and they get that knowledge what they require to lead a successful and a meaningful life, a full of purpose life. Now, moving on to the question. Government is providing free of cost schools. Government is concerned about the curriculum. But my question is that how government can help a teacher to get that nation building title once again?
That's the toughest question you've asked today, and they've been tough questions. I think, so I'm going to go to my African experience. There was a moment right around independence where it was the educators who were some of the key fashioners of the future of the education, of future of the country here, because they were the educated. I'm thinking in the Republic of Benin, but also elsewhere. And I think getting more teachers involved in ministerial work, and I would say that at the national level, the state level, and the local level. And it could be that we invite them for a 3-year stint and give them leave from the classroom to do that. It's very hard people who go into government seem to think that it's a lifelong profession. It's well paid, great influence, nice perks, I guess, painful in some respects. But I'm wondering if we could envision a certain percentage, even if it's a small percentage, let's say 10%, who would be teachers of various subjects who would come in and they would have a limited time frame, let's say 3 years, and then they would go back into the classroom, and then they could form part of a collective group of people who are participating in this. I've been following one of the US ambassadors who teaches at Stanford. He's very active on Twitter and addressing the situation in Ukraine and elsewhere. And that's kind of a perfect model. He's actually doing both, but in some ways that's kind of a perfect model of somebody. But our universities and our schools, and I don't think it has to be just at the university level, it could be even younger, tend not to give people the free time. There's a kind of ownership issue. And so facilitating that and putting in place kind of goals. If we don't have time goals and date goals, nothing gets done. Time goals rather and result goals, nothing gets done. So if we were to say by the year 2030, it would be important for us to have 8% of our ministers and of our officials in state and national government to be coming from schools. That would give more priority to schools, and it would provide an interesting lens, because right now so much is being driven by financial interests of those who are providing the funding for particular policy decisions. And it's not so much getting a counter narrative to that, but it's getting a different way of thinking about the results, more broad-based, and simultaneously at from the vantage of both the trees and the forest, the locality and the broader international dimension of this.
Yeah, true. What a great answer. And yes, this thing will help teacher to get this pull from the government side, inshallah. Well, Suzanne, once again, thank you so very much for your time. Thank you so very much for sharing your wonderful, worth listening to thoughts with us. It's really an amazing session with you. I really enjoy, and I really learn a lot from you. Thank you so very much for your time.
My real pleasure, and thank you again for this wonderful discussion.
Yeah, and as we promised that I'm going to disturb you again for the failure management and how to handle the criticism. So I'm going to write you another email to get your time once again.
My pleasure. Be well.
Yeah, sure. All right, then take care. Stay blessed. Bye-bye. Thank you so very much for your time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.